Hello. Welcome to Midnight Sleep Whispers. Here you can dive into a world of mysterious and chilling horror stories. Perfect for falling asleep or just unwinding. Get cozy, dim the lights, and let's begin.
Cosmic Spectrum, Part Done. The Fragment. Michael pressed his forehead against the cold window of Outpost Thule's observation bay, staring out into the endless void. Stars speckled the darkness with distant light, but here, far from Earth, the darkness felt alive. The remote research station orbited a dim red star on the fringe of known space, and Michael often reminded himself that the solitude was part of the mission. Even so, an uneasy feeling had hung over him all day, a prickling at the base of his neck that wouldn't fade. Easy, a little closer, he muttered, focusing on the task at hand. Outside the station, tethered to its hull by a safety line, a maneuvering drone gently nudged a small object toward the airlock. The object, a jagged piece of stone or metal about the size of a soccer ball, tumbled end over end in microgravity. It glowed faintly with an inner greenish luminescence. From the nearby control console, Sarah's voice crackled over the comm, calm and precise. Drone is in position. Contact in 3, 2, got it. Through the viewport, Michael watched as the drone's clamping arms secured the mysterious fragment. A static flicker briefly danced across the station's comm channel. Michael's earpiece hissed with soft pop and then cleared. He glanced toward Sarah, who stood hunched over the console's monitors. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and worry pinched her eyebrows together. "Did you feel that interference?" she asked, adjusting the headset on her neck. Michael nodded. "Yeah, could be the fragment has a magnetic field. Let's get it inside and run full scans." His breath fogged a small patch on the glass as he spoke. Excitement warred with caution in his mind. 2 days ago, Outpost Thule's long-range sensors had picked up this object drifting in a slow, unnatural trajectory nearby. It wasn't on any expected comet path or satellite orbit. Curiosity won out. The crew had voted to retrieve it. They were here to study cosmic anomalies after all, and this fragment certainly qualified. The station's airlock cycle engaged, bringing the drone and its cargo into the pressurized chamber. Michael and Sarah left the observation bay to meet it. In the corridor, Commander Tom Miller floated down from the upper deck, using a handrail to guide himself in the low gravity. His muscular frame and buzz cut gave him a permanent look of authority. "Our catch of the day is on board, I hear," he called. There was a forced ease in his tone. "Yes, sir," Michael replied. "Drone brought it in without trouble, aside from a blip of static." They reached the airlock antechamber as the inner door slid open. A rush of cold air greeted them. Dr. Richard Wolf, the station's lead xenogeologist, was already there with a tablet in hand and eyes shining behind round spectacles. The drone extended its arms, depositing the fragment gently onto a padded table. For a moment, the four of them simply stared. The object was irregular and dark, as if carved from obsidian, yet through its surface ran veins of luminescence pulsing faintly like glowing embers. Jagged protrusions and smooth facets caught the light in odd ways. It looked ancient and alien. "Incredible. Absolutely incredible," Dr. Wolf whispered. He stepped closer, reaching out gloved fingers but stopping just short of touching the fragment. "It's emitting light on its own. This almost looks biological, but the shape, I've never seen anything like it." Sarah exhaled slowly. Shouldn't we run a radiation scan first before we get too handsy? Ever practical, she held up a Geiger counter. Michael felt a small surge of relief at her grounded approach. Commander Miller nodded. Go ahead, Lieutenant. Sarah circled the fragment, instrument clicking. After a few passes, she gave the all clear. No significant radiation detected. If it came from a reactor or had a heavy isotope, we'd know. It's surprisingly clean. Michael leaned in, careful not to breathe on the object through his open helmet visor. Electromagnetics could be at play, that static we felt. Suddenly, the fragment's inner glow flared brighter, a sickly green flash. Everyone took an involuntary step back. Michael's heart skipped. The station lights flickered as if in response, and a low hum resonated through the floor. Then, just as quickly, the fragment's glow subsided to its prior faint pulse. The lights stabilized. In the silence, Michael realized he was holding his breath. Dr. Wolf let out a nervous chuckle. Well, it certainly knows how to make an entrance. He adjusted his glasses with a trembling hand. I'd like to get this into the research lab containment unit straight away. There's so much to test. Commander Miller frowned, eyeing the fragment warily. Agreed. But let's keep it sealed. We don't know if it's emitting fumes or microscopic particles. Treated as potentially hazardous until proven otherwise, Wolf and Michael maneuvered the table out of the airlock and down the corridor to the lab, with Sarah and Miller close behind. As they went, Michael couldn't shake the tingling feeling in his fingers. When the fragment had flashed, he almost thought he'd felt something. A brief surge, like an unseen static shock prickling across his skin and deep into his nerves. He flexed his hands inside his sleeves, likely just adrenaline. In the bright confines of the research lab, they placed the fragment within a glass containment chamber atop a steel bench. Dr. Wolf immediately busied himself setting up instruments. Spectrometers, laser scanners, electromagnetic sensors, his earlier trepidation forgotten in a scientist's curiosity. Miller hovered near the door, arms crossed, his gaze never leaving the eerie green object. Sarah initiated the chamber's sealing mechanism. Atmospheric isolation complete, we can poke it with all the tools we want now, she said. Her attempt at levity fell flat. Her voice was tight. Michael stood at the chamber's edge, leaning in to peer at the fragment from different angles. Up close, he could see patterns on its surface, swirling striations that almost looked carved or grown. It reminded him of a fossilized coral or petrified wood, yet clearly metallic in places. It's beautiful, he murmured, surprised at hearing himself say it. Sarah shot him a look. Funny, I was thinking it's ugly as sin. She offered a fleeting smile to soften the tease. Definitely strange, though. Dr. Wolf cleared his throat. Let's see what secrets you hold. He activated a scanning sequence. The lab lights dimmed slightly as power was redirected to the analysis equipment. On a nearby monitor, lines of data began to crawl, representing the fragment's spectral readouts. Composition: primarily carbon silicate, traces of iridium, osmium. Something is off the charts here. I'm not sure what this peak is, Wolf muttered, tapping the screen. It's like nothing I've studied before. Miller pushed away from the wall, stepping nearer. Bottom line it, Doc. Any immediate threats? Chemical volatiles? Radioactive elements? Wolf shook his head slowly, eyes glued to the data. No obvious toxins or radiation. If anything, this thing is inert matter. But these energy readings, low-frequency EM field fluctuations, it's almost like it's active on some level. Perhaps piezoelectric crystals inside? Or an organic component giving off bioluminescence. Commander Miller grunted. All right, keep it contained and keep studying it. I'll inform Central Command of what we brought on board in case we need backup. He turned to Michael and Sarah. You two should get some rest now. You've been up for nearly 20 hours straight with the retrieval operation. Doctor, you'll brief us all in the morning on your initial findings. Michael hesitated. Part of him wanted to stay and watch every moment of the analysis, but fatigue tugged at his limbs, and the rush of the discovery was ebbing, leaving him drained. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. Come on, we'll be more useful after a few hours off our feet. Understood, sir. Michael finally answered the commander. He took one last look at the fragment, still glowing softly in its glass prison, and allowed Sarah to guide him out of the lab. In the corridor, the station's night cycle lighting had switched on, a dimmer reddish hue, simulating twilight. Outpost Thule's daily schedule ran on a 28-hour rotation to match the cycle of the red dwarf star they orbited, but it's still roughly aligned with a human concept of day and night. They drifted toward the crew quarters. That thing, what do you think it is? Sarah asked quietly. A piece of an asteroid? A satellite from some offshoot program? Or something alive? Michael rubbed a hand over his close-cropped dark hair. I don't know. Could be a part of something larger, broken off. The way it glowed, it felt like it reacted to us. Sarah nodded, arms crossed over herself. When it flashed, I had this sensation like when someone sneaks up on you. My heart still racing a bit. They paused at a small round viewport in the passageway. Outside, the endless night was punctuated by the dull red star and a curtain of far-off galaxies. Michael stared out, trying to calm the uncertainty twisting inside him. Maybe it's nothing, he said, attempting confidence. Some quirk of geology we haven't seen. We'll analyze it, send the data back home, become footnotes in some science journal. Sarah's reflection faintly appeared beside his own in the glass. Maybe. She didn't sound convinced. After a moment, she added, It's strange. When you were bringing it in, I felt this presence. Like we weren't alone on the station anymore. It sounds silly Michael didn't respond immediately. He'd felt it too. An uncanny sense that something had joined them, unseen but watching. Instead of admitting that, he managed a half smile. We're just tired and spooked. Goes with the territory of finding weird space rocks at 3 a.m. Sarah gave a soft laugh, the tension easing from her face. You're probably right. She gently punched his arm. All right, hero, off to bed with you. I'll crash too after I log the retrieval data. Michael nodded. Sleep well. See you in a few hours. He continued on to his small private cabin as Sarah headed to the comm station. Once behind the sliding door of his quarters, Michael floated into the chair and began unlacing his boots. The quiet hum of the station's ventilation was soothing, familiar. He pulled off his boots and pushed off toward the bunk. Before lying down, he tapped the wall console, dimming the lights completely. In the darkness, he gazed up through the narrow ceiling window, which peered into space. The fragment's glow had imprinted on his retinas. He still saw a phantom green light when he closed his eyes. As he drifted into an uneasy sleep, Michael had the distinct impression that something out there, or in here, might be gazing back. Part 2. Waking Nightmares. The artificial night on Outpost Thule brought a fragile semblance of calm. Soft red emergency lights cast long shadows in the corridors, and most of the crew retired to their bunks, exhaustion overtaking curiosity for the time being. But in the silence of the early hours, the station's newest resident did not rest. In the research lab, the fragment sat in its glass chamber, glowing faintly. There was no one to witness when, occasionally, that glow pulsed just a little brighter, like the ember of a breath or a blinking eye. Michael was not aware of any of that. He was dreaming. In his dream, he found himself standing in one of the station's corridors, but all the overhead lights were off. The only illumination was that same green radiance spilling out from the research lab doorway ahead. It bathed the metal walls in a sickly hue. He took a step forward, boots clanging hollowly on the deck. "Hello?" he called, but his voice made no sound. The corridor stretched unnaturally long, as if he were running in place no matter how many steps he took. The green light grew brighter. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the lab, a silhouette backlit by the glow. Michael squinted, heart thudding, as the figure moved towards him. It was a man. As he came closer, details resolved. Short, dark hair, a familiar crooked nose. David? It was David, Michael's younger brother. But that was impossible. David had died in a car crash on Earth when Michael was in training for this mission. Michael tried to speak, but his voice was muted by the dream. David walked right up to him and stopped. His face was partially in shadow, but Michael could see those eyes. David's eyes had always been gentle brown, but now they were black, pits of infinite depth. When David opened his mouth, a static hiss came out, and then a whisper that cut through Michael's soul. "You shouldn't have brought it here, Mike." A wave of guilt and fear washed over Michael. In the dream, he wanted to respond, to apologize, to scream. He wasn't sure. He reached out to touch his brother, to confirm if he was real. David's face contorted suddenly into a rictus of terror. His jaw distended wider and wider, an inhuman gape, and from his throat came a chorus of overlapping whispers, like multiple voices speaking in unison. Michael caught only fragments. "In the dark, open the door." He stumbled back, heart pounding. The corridor around him began to tremble. With a deafening crack, the walls themselves started to split apart, darkness spilling through the seams. David, or the thing wearing David's face, lunged at Michael, hands outstretched. Where his fingers touched Michael's arms, a burning cold sank through the skin. Michael jolted awake with a shout, flailing in zero-G. He slammed into the wall of his cabin, disoriented. Sweat clung to his skin, and his heart was racing as if he'd run miles. It took a few seconds for reality to reassert itself. He was in his quarters, safe, the station intact. The only light came from the dim night lamp by the doorway. He ran a hand over his face. "Just a nightmare," he whispered to himself. But it had felt so real. Too real, especially David. Those eyes. Michael's mouth was dry. He needed a drink of water and maybe a lap around the corridor to clear his head. Sleep was gone for now. He pulled himself out through the door and gently kicked off toward the galley. The corridor lights were low, painting everything in a reddish penumbra. As he passed by a circular window, he glanced out. The starfield stared back indifferent. Michael rubbed his chest to settle his breathing. It was only a dream, he repeated internally, a byproduct of stress and that unnerving encounter with the fragment. Rounding a corner toward the mess hall, he almost collided with a small figure drifting in the opposite direction. "Whoa!" he exclaimed softly, reaching out to steady the person by the shoulders. It was Dr. Elena Alvarez, the station's medical officer. Elena's dark hair floated loosely around her face, her normally warm bronze complexion pale and clammy. She gave a tight, embarrassed smile when she recognized Michael. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you." "It's all right," Michael assured, releasing his grip when she found hold of a wall handle. "Are you okay? You look shaken." Elena let out a shaky breath that turned into a humorless chuckle. "I could ask the same about you." She pointed gently at his chest. Michael looked down to find a small speck of blood on his t-shirt, just below the collar. Startled, he touched his lower face. His lip was split, and a bit of blood had beaded there, likely from biting it in his sleep, or when he jolted awake. "It's nothing," he murmured, wiping it with the back of his hand. "Just bit my lip in my sleep, I guess." He paused, studying her expression. Couldn't sleep either. Elena shook her head. "I had a nightmare. It was extremely vivid. I decided a cup of tea might help me calm down." Her voice was measured but soft. In her role as doctor, she was used to soothing others. Admitting her own distress was less common. Michael nodded in understanding. "Same here. I was heading for water or tea myself." He gestured for her to accompany him into the mess. They quietly entered the tiny galley area, and Alvarez retrieved 2 bulb-shaped mugs designed for zero-G drinking. As she started the water heater, she asked, "What did you dream? If you don't mind sharing." Michael hesitated. The images of David and the voices lingered fresh and raw in his mind, but voicing it might lessen the power. "I saw my brother David. He's been gone a long time. In the dream, it wasn't really him. Something using his face, maybe." Michael tried to keep his tone even. "He said we shouldn't have brought the fragment aboard. And then everything fell apart around me." Elena's eyes showed a flicker of recognition or alarm. She quickly poured hot water over some dried chamomile in a mesh, handing 1 mug to Michael. "I saw my father," she said quietly. "He died 10 years ago, but in my dream he was standing in my room, speaking to me in perfect English. He never spoke a word of it when he was alive. He kept saying, 'It's inside you already.'" She broke off and looked down, stirring her tea. "Listen to us. We sound like we're in a ghost story." Michael managed a wry smile. "If we start dreaming about the same things, then I'll really get worried." He took a sip of the warm tea, letting the herbs calm his nerves bit by bit. Alvarez glanced at him, the corners of her mouth lifting slightly. "I won't prescribe us antipsychotics just yet. We've all been under a lot of stress out here, and that artifact, it's bound to stir up our subconscious fears." "Right," Michael agreed, though he wasn't entirely convinced. The parallel of both of them seeing dead loved ones was hard to brush aside. If Sarah or the others had similar dreams, he made a note to ask subtly in the morning. They drank in silence for a minute, the quiet hum of the station the only backdrop. Just as Michael felt his heartbeat returning to normal, a shrill sound tore through the air. A scream, a man's scream, high, jagged with terror, reverberated through the corridor outside. Michael and Elena snapped alert, adrenaline surging anew. The scream cut off abruptly. but its echo lingered in the metal halls. Michael's mind raced. That voice, it sounded like Dr. Wolf. They ditched the cups, water droplets and tea leaves floating away in the sudden chaos, and pushed out of the galley. Down the corridor, a door was ajar, the door to Dr. Wolf's quarters. Light spilled out along with a low, keening moan. Michael reached the doorway first, Alvarez close behind, and they peered inside. Richard Wolf was crouched in a corner of his small cabin, back pressed to the wall. In the dim overhead light, his face shone with sweat, eyes wide in abject terror. He was muttering to himself, hands clamped over his ears. On the floor, Michael saw shards of a ceramic mug and a dark puddle of coffee seeping into the air-filled grate. Wolf must have woken and fetched coffee only to... Richard, Michael said gently, stepping inside. The geologist didn't seem to hear. He rocked slightly, mumbled words tumbling out in a frantic mantra. Not real, not real, not real, not real. Alvarez moved around Michael and approached Wolf slowly, palms out. Richard, it's Dr. Alvarez. You're safe. It was a nightmare. Her voice was the practiced, soothing tone of a physician, but Michael caught the tremor underneath. Wolf's eyes flickered to Alvarez. Elena, he croaked. His voice was raw, as if he'd been screaming himself hoarse. It's not real. Tell me it's not real. She inched closer. It's not real. You had a bad dream, that's all. We're here with you. Wolf swallowed, his gaze darting to Michael at the doorway, then past him, then around the room as if searching every shadow. He was here, he whispered. Who was here? Michael asked, kneeling a few feet away to avoid crowding him. Wolf trembled violently. Dr. Volkov from my grad school. He died last year, but I saw him. He was standing right where you are. Wolf lifted a shaking hand to point at Michael. He was smiling, but his eyes, oh God. Wolf squeezed his own eyes shut, his tears spilled free. He grabbed me. I felt it. He began to sob, shoulders convulsing. Michael felt an icy chill. Another dead loved one? Dr. Volkov must have been a mentor or colleague to Wolf. The pattern was too strong to ignore now. Before he could question further, Commander Miller's voice boomed from behind, breathless and stern. What the hell's going on? Michael turned to see Miller and Sarah both arriving at the cabin door, likely awakened by the scream. Miller's pistol was in hand, though he kept it pointed down once he assessed no immediate physical threat. Sarah's face was drawn with worry, a bruise on her cheek where she might have bumped into something in her rush. It's Dr. Wolf, Alvarez explained quickly. He had a severe nightmare or hallucination. Wolf's cries had subsided into exhausted whimpers. Alvarez gently guided him to sit on the edge of his bunk. He went pliantly, all fight drained out of him. Commander Miller stepped inside, holstering his sidearm. His jaw worked as he took in the scene, one of his crew unraveling and three others looking nearly shaken. Richard, talk to me, Miller said, not unkindly, as he knelt in front of Wolf. What did you see? Wolf opened his bloodshot eyes. He focused on Miller as if anchoring himself to reality. Commander spoke to me, he whispered. Volkov. But it wasn't him, I know it wasn't. It said we were all going to die here. Wolf's voice cracked. It said it was already here among us. And then his eyes turned black, and he... Wolf choked on a sob, unable to continue. Miller placed a steadying hand on Wolf's knee. We've all had a scare tonight. But listen, we're not going to die here. Nothing is among us. We brought a strange rock on board, that's it. Maybe it's emitting something that's affecting our brains, some low-frequency sound or electromagnetic waves. We'll run tests and figure it out. But you're safe, you hear me? We all are. Michael wished he felt as confident as the commander sounded. But Miller's words seemed to ease Wolf a measure. Richard nodded weakly, wiping his face. Yes, sir. Alvarez was already moving to a wall-mounted first aid kit. I'm going to give Richard a mild sedative, she said, just to help him rest dreamlessly for a while. Miller looked around at the others. Agreed. The rest of you, listen up. We may have an environmental issue, something causing hallucinations or nightmares, until we isolate it. I want everyone to stay out of that lab with the fragment, and nobody is to be alone. We work in pairs at minimum. He fixed his eyes on Sarah and Michael. Understood, they both answered. Yes, sir. Alvarez returned with a syringe, gently injecting Wolf's arm. He winced, but offered no resistance. Within moments, his breathing began to slow and his posture loosened as the sedative took hold. Michael, help me get him into bed properly, the doctor said. Michael helped lift Wolf's legs up and eased him onto his bunk pillow. In seconds, the scientist was in a deep, albeit drugged slumber. Miller ran a hand over his scalp, exhaling. All right, Elena, stay with him. Sarah, go with Michael and check the lab. From outside the containment, see if any readings spiked. Maybe that thing is releasing fumes or something. I'll pull station diagnostics for any anomalies in atmosphere or EM fields. A chorus of assent met his orders. In truth, Michael did not relish returning near the fragment, but he was determined to figure this out. As they were filing out of Wolf's cabin, Sarah touched Michael's arm. Are you okay? She whispered. In the brighter light of the corridor now, she could see the shaken look he wore. Did you have one too? Michael nodded slowly. Seems we all did. The haunted look in Sarah's eyes confirmed she hadn't been spared. She just hadn't had a chance to mention it yet. Together, they headed for the research lab. The station was eerily quiet. The usual hum now an unnerving undercurrent. At the lab entrance, they stopped. Through the observation window, the fragment sat exactly where they'd left it, bathed in the overhead fluorescence that Miller apparently had left on. The glass containment was slightly fogged, likely from residual outgassing or temperature differences, making the objects glow hazy. Michael checked a wall-mounted panel that displayed environmental readings for the lab. Oxygen levels normal. No breach in the chamber seal. EM levels. He frowned. They're higher than before. Here, look. He pointed at a graph that showed a squiggling line. The EM field around the fragment was oscillating more intensely than when Wolf first scanned it. Could that cause what happened? Sarah wondered aloud. Some kind of electromagnetic interference messing with our brainwaves, triggering nightmares? Maybe, Michael replied, though it feels a little far-fetched. We've all been around high-powered machinery and magnets before without seeing ghosts of our dead relatives. Sarah pursed her lips. Unless it's something we've never encountered. But yeah, it feels intentional, doesn't it? Targeted, she pressed her nose to the observation glass, peering intently at the fragment. Its glow seemed to pulsate slowly, like the dim heartbeat of a slumbering beast. If I didn't know better, I'd say this thing is thinking or reaching out. Michael didn't comment, but inside, he agreed. The experiences they each had seemed calculated to terrify and unbalance them emotionally. He tapped his comm. "Commander, this is Rhodes. The fragment's EM output is elevated. No other changes visible. It could be the source of these hallucinations." Miller responded promptly, his tone clipped. "Copy that. I'm going to wake up Patel to run a full atmospheric analysis. In the meantime, I want that fragment packed up. We have a shielded lead container in storage for transporting volatile samples. Use it. Maybe if we block whatever it's emitting, this will stop." Michael glanced at Sarah. She gave a firm nod. "Understood, sir. We're on it." They ventured into the lab. Michael moved cautiously to the supply locker and withdrew a dull gray case about half a meter long. The lid-lined box. It was heavy, even in low G. Sarah stood by the containment chamber controls. "Ready?" she asked. Michael positioned the open case directly beside the chamber's hatch. "Ready." Sarah entered the override code, and the glass slid aside with a pneumatic hiss. For a heartbeat, both of them tensed, expecting something. But the fragment remained still on its pedestal, glowing softly as ever. Michael steadied himself, donned a pair of thick protective gloves, and reached in. His hands closed around the fragment's rough surface. It was cool to the touch, vibrating faintly with that strange inner energy. Lifting it was harder than expected. It felt denser than its size suggested. As he maneuvered it into the case, a prickling sensation danced up his arms. The fine hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. "Do you feel that?" he murmured. Sarah swallowed. "Yeah, like static in the air." The moment the fragment settled into the padded interior of the lead box, Michael swung the lid shut. He latched it, sealing the object in darkness. Instantly, the lab lights flickered. A sharp, audible crack sounded behind them, one of the overhead fluorescent tubes bursting into sparks. Sarah jumped, letting out a gasp. Michael instinctively put himself in front of her, eyes darting around. The remaining lights stabilized. Wisps of smoke curled from the shattered tube. Shards of glass glittered on the floor. That could be coincidence, Sarah whispered, though she didn't sound convinced. Michael bent to retrieve the lead case with the fragment. It felt inert, no vibrations permeating the thick lining. He hoped whatever influence it had was now contained. They left the lab, Michael carrying the box carefully. Outside, they nearly bumped into Raj Patel, the station's technician, who was hurrying by with a toolkit. His dark eyes were wide and alert. "Commander sent me to check atmospheric systems," he explained briskly. "He thinks maybe a gas or something leaked." "We think it was this," Michael replied, hefting the case. "We just sealed the fragment inside. The nightmares, hallucinations. We think it was emitting some kind of field." Patel looked warily at the box as if it might bite. "Damn, I knew that thing was bad news. Should toss it out the airlock?" Sarah gave a wan smile. "One step at a time. Let's see if things settle now that it's boxed up." They parted ways, Patel heading to the life support hub, and Michael and Sarah returning toward crew quarters. When they reached Wolf's cabin, they found Commander Miller waiting in the hall outside. His face was grim, but he raised a questioning eyebrow at the sight of the case. "It's done," Michael confirmed. "We locked it in the lead container. How's Wolf?" Miller jerked his head toward the cabin. "Sleeping like a baby, thanks to Dr. Alvarez. She's monitoring him. No change in environmental so far." He studied the case in Michael's hands with clear mistrust. take that to the storage bay. I'll decide whether we jettison it or keep it for further study later. For now, at least it's out of sight. As Michael moved to follow orders, the commander put a hand on his shoulder briefly. "You all right, son?" Michael realized his hands were trembling a bit on the handles of the case. "Yes, sir." "Just shaking." Miller nodded. "Join the club. Get some rest after you stow that thing." "That's an order." "Yes, sir," Michael replied with a ghost of a smile. Fatigue was crashing over him now that the immediate crisis seemed at bay. The adrenaline of the last hour ebbed, leaving him bone-tired. He and Sarah secured the lead box in a locked cabinet in the storage module, essentially a closet for hazardous materials. Only senior crew like Miller or Alvarez would have access without a code, which gave Michael some peace of mind. As they sealed the cabinet, Sarah let out a long breath and leaned against the wall. "Do you think that's it then? We put the genie back in the bottle?" Michael rubbed his eyes. "I hope so." Yet a hollowness sat in his gut. It felt too easy, if easy was the word for the nightmare they just endured. He forced a reassuring tone for Sarah's sake. "At least if anyone has any more nightmares, we'll know it's just our own psyche, not that thing." She nodded, pushing off toward the exit. "I'll take that. I never want a night like this again." They walked back toward their quarters together in a weary silence. The station now felt calmer. The oppressive atmosphere had lightened like a storm passing. Perhaps it truly was over. Pausing outside her door, Sarah managed a faint smile. "Get some sleep, Michael." "You too, Sarah." He lingered a moment as she entered her cabin. For an instant, he considered saying more, admitting how truly terrified he had been, acknowledging that her presence had kept him grounded. But the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he simply said, "See you in the morning." And she replied, "Morning?" with a tired wave. Michael entered his own cabin and collapsed onto his bunk without bothering to change out of his clothes. He felt like someone had wrung out his mind like a wet towel. As he closed his eyes, he fervently hoped for dreamless oblivion. Outside, the station drifted through the starry void, carrying its complement of souls through the sleeping hours. And in a locked cabinet deep in the storage bay, something ancient and inscrutable rested in darkness, waiting for dawn. Part 3. The Shattered Mind. There was no natural dawn in space, but as Outpost Thule's cycle lights brightened to simulate morning, a collective sigh of relief seemed to pass through the station. The crew's nightmares had not returned in those few hours of fitful rest. By containing the fragment, they hoped they had contained the horror as well. Commander Miller convened everyone in the mess hall after the wake-up bell. Michael arrived to find Sarah and Raj Patel already nursing cups of strong coffee. Dr. Alvarez was there too, looking tired but composed. Only Dr. Wolf was absent. He was still sedated, under orders to remain on bed rest until the doctor cleared him for duty. Miller got straight to the point. "Whatever happened last night, it was unacceptable. I won't have my crew at the mercy of some unknown force. Rhodes and Korolyova," he nodded to Michael and Sarah, "did the right thing by locking that fragment up. There have been no incidents since, correct?" Everyone murmured agreement. Michael sipped his coffee, the bitter heat a welcome jolt to his system. "Now," Miller continued, "I've gone through the station diagnostics. No chemical leaks. Life support is normal. Patel's analysis turned up zilch for toxins or foreign substances in the air. The only abnormality was an electromagnetic surge localized around the research lab, which lines up with the fragment being the cause. He folded his arms and scanned their faces. Bottom line, I think we treat this as a hostile environmental hazard. It's not just a rock, it's doing something to us. Dr. Alvarez cleared her throat softly. Sir, if I may, Richard's condition is stable physically, but mentally he's still very fragile. If that fragment can affect us so strongly in a short time, I worry about long-term exposure. Perhaps we should leave the station at least until a specialized team can retrieve the object for study in a safer facility. Miller's expression hardened. He was not a man who liked abandoning his post, but he gave a curt nod. I've considered evacuation, but we're a long way out. The shuttle can get us to the nearest outpost, sure, but Command might prefer we stay and secure the station until relief arrives. We can't decide that until we hear back from them. He tapped the comms console built into the mess table. I sent a priority message to HQ about 6 hours ago. No response yet, likely due to the distance and alignment issues with the relay satellite. We should get confirmation within another day. Michael set down his mug, a knot forming in his stomach. In the meantime, sir, what do we do about it? Miller glanced at him. For now, nothing. It stays locked up. We run periodic scans to ensure it's truly neutralized in there. Nobody is to open that cabinet without my direct order. Understood? All heads bobbed in assent. Michael couldn't imagine anyone wanting to open it. Raj Patel spoke up, voice tense. Sir, with respect, I think we should eject it into space, like yesterday. If it can mess with our heads, maybe it's alive or sending signals. Throw it out and let it drift. Better yet, nudge it into the planet's gravity and let it burn up. Sarah nodded. I second that. A few others murmured agreement. Michael felt a pang of guilt. A part of him still yearned to understand the fragment, to solve its mystery. But Patel's argument made sense. Safety first. Commander Miller raised a hand to quell the discussions. Believe me, I'm tempted. But I also know Command might want that artifact. If it truly is of alien origin or something unprecedented, just chucking it might be considered a loss, he sighed. Still, I won't risk my crew's lives for it. If anything else goes sideways, I'll personally boot that thing out the nearest airlock. For now, we hold tight. The crew accepted that for the moment. Miller dismissed them to their duties, with the caveat that they continue working in pairs and report any strange feelings immediately. Michael found himself assigned to assist Dr. Alvarez in Med Bay. As the others dispersed, he followed her through the corridors. How's Richard now? He asked. Alvarez brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Sedated, sleeping. I plan to let him wake naturally soon and evaluate his mental state. Honestly, I'm not sure how much he'll recall or how he'll react. That fright could leave psychological trauma. Michael's jaw tightened. What about the rest of us? There's no shrink on board to talk us through seeing ghosts in the dark. A new sound reverberated through the hull, a metallic scraping screech, as if something was dragging across the outer skin of the station. Michael and Sarah locked eyes. That sound raised every hair on his body. Where's it coming from? He whispered. Before she could answer, a high-pitched shriek echoed from down the corridor, the way to the storage bay. It was not human. It was as if metal itself was screaming. Sarah fumbled for the flare gun holstered at her belt, standard gear for any potential fire emergencies. now repurposed mentally as a weapon. Michael realized he had no tool or weapon on him. He'd left the plasma cutter in the lab. His heart pounded. "We need to find Commander Miller," he managed. Together, they pushed forward, moving toward Sector 3. The corridor ahead was dimmer. Emergency bulkheads had sealed at intervals, compartmentalizing sections to contain the presumed breach. They reached a half-closed hatch, where one bulkhead had gotten stuck partly open, perhaps jammed by the sudden closure. Squeezing through, they came upon a scene of chaos. The storage bay door was buckled and hanging ajar like something had forced it from within. The area beyond was dark, main power knocked out in that section. A thin mist of coolant or vapor hung in the zero-G like ghostly smoke. Just outside the bay, Raj Patel clung to a support strut, breathing hard. His eyes were wild. Blood oozed from a gash on his forehead, globules floating around him. "Raj!" Sarah cried, pushing to him. "Are you hurt badly?" Patel shook his head, gesturing frantically toward the ruined door. "It got out," he rasped. "The fragment, something came out of it." Michael felt as if the floor fell away beneath him. "What do you mean?" "Slow down," Patel wiped blood from his eyes. "I was coming to check a pressure fluctuation. I saw the storage door bend like it was hit by a bulldozer from inside, then it blew outward." He closed his eyes, shuddering. "Tom was with me. He was right by the door when it blew. He got pulled in." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Commander Miller got pulled in? By what?" Patel stared into the dark bay, pupils dilated with shock. "I don't know. It was like a shadow, a big shape. It knocked me back. I hit the wall. When I looked, Tom and it were gone. The whole breach alarms. It must have opened the outer airlock." Michael's mind raced. The fragment was gone, and something with it, a shape. Commander Miller missing. A hull breach sealed, scratches on the hull outside. The creature from his nightmares. Was it no longer a dream? He unlatched a flashlight from a wall emergency kit and shone it through the gaping storage bay entrance. The inside was wrecked. Containers thrown about, tools floating like debris after an explosion. The far end, indeed, open to space. The emergency bulkhead had closed halfway over a torn, empty expanse where the outer doors and part of the wall were simply gone. A jagged hole with edges glinting in Michael's flashlight beam. Beyond that hole lay the stars and the curve of Caliban below. Air whistled softly from a hairline crack in the intermediate bulkhead, hence faint mist and partial pressure loss. Sarah's voice trembled. "It blew out the side of the station. My God!" A low groan echoed from somewhere above, the metal structure adjusting to the damage. Patel sucked in a breath, pointing upward with shaking finger. "You hear that? It's moving. It crawled out and now it's on the hull." Michael strained to listen. Faint, scrabbling, scraping sounds could be heard, traversing the exterior plating. Heading where? It was impossible to tell. Suddenly, through the breach, a dark shape drifted into view, floating away from the station. Sarah caught Michael's arm and gasped, "Look!" He aimed his flashlight. It was a human figure, tumbling slowly end over end into the void. Miller? No. Michael's chest constricted. The shape was wrong. A limp, thin body in a torn jumpsuit. As it rotated, the beam illuminated Dr. Richard Wolf's face, pale, eyes closed. Wolf's corpse drifted into the darkness, disappearing from sight as it fell toward the planet's atmosphere far below. "How?" Michael choked out. Wolf had been in medbay moments ago. How could he be out there? Alvarez's distraught voice came over the comm, cracked with panic. Michael! Sarah! Richard he changed. He broke through. Oh, God, he grabbed me. A crash and static. Michael fumbled for his communication. Elena! Come in! Alvarez! No reply. Only static and a faint, horrible wet sound. Patel started to hyperventilate. It's inside. It went through him. Sarah pushed off, heading back toward Med Bay without another word. Michael snapped into motion and followed. Raj, get to the shuttle bay and prep the Skylark for launch, he shouted over his shoulder. We might have to evacuate now. Patel gave a shaky nod and kicked off down a different passage toward the aft docking section. Michael and Sarah raced through the corridors, hearts and throats. They had to get to Dr. Alvarez and possibly Miller, if they were still alive. They turned the last corner to Med Bay and froze in horror at the threshold. The Med Bay door was destroyed, ripped from its track. Inside, flickering lights revealed chaos. Cabinets overturned, glass and medical supplies drifting. The room's far side had another gaping hole, edges curled outward. Something had torn out into space from the inside, just as in the storage bay. Below that breach lay Dr. Elena Alvarez, half outside the station. She was caught on a twisted beam, her lower body protruding into open space, upper body still in the med bay. Blood speckled the floor around her. She wasn't moving. Sarah let out a broken cry and surged forward. Michael grabbed her waist in caution. Wait! He scanned the room. No sign of Commander Miller and no sign of the entity. The station's AI chimed again. Warning, pressure loss detected in med bay. Ceiling bulkheads. A partition began sliding down behind them, aiming to lock them out to contain the leak. Go! Michael yelled, pulling Sarah through to Alvarez before the bulkhead sealed. The partition thudded shut, isolating the med bay from the rest of the station and halting further decompression. They rushed to Alvarez's form. Elena was unconscious, her face pale, but miraculously she still had a pulse when Michael pressed trembling fingers to her neck. One of her arms was hooked around a bent pipe, likely the only thing that had stopped her from being sucked completely out. The vacuum of space had done its damage, though. Her legs and abdomen that hung outside were covered in frost, and her jumpsuit ballooned awkwardly from the rapid decompression. Working together, they pulled Dr. Alvarez fully back inside. Michael tore the emergency breathing mask from the medkit and fitted over her nose and mouth, flooding her with oxygen. Sarah grabbed a thermal blanket and wrapped her former mentor's lower half to ward off further freezing. Elena's eyes fluttered. Astonishingly, she was still alive, though barely. Her voice came out a weak rasp against the mask, but they managed to catch her words. Richard changed, attacked me. I'm sorry. Shh, don't talk, Sarah pleaded, tears spilling freely now. She held Alvarez's hand, trying to give what comfort she could. Michael's mind spun. Changed. Wolf changed. He remembered Wolf's shoulder bruises and how Wolf said Volkov grabbed him. Perhaps the entity had partially merged with Wolf, used him as a vessel to escape the containment. No time to analyze. They needed to get Elena out, get to the shuttle, and get off this cursed station. A guttural screech echoed from somewhere beyond the mid-bay breach, loud even in the vacuum silence. The creature was likely still clinging to the hull, perhaps reorienting after nearly being thrown into space with Wolf's body. Michael's blood ran cold with the realization they were now sealed in the med bay with a monster crawling on the outside hull just yards away. He locked eyes with Sarah. She understood at once. "We have to run." Michael hefted Alvarez into his arms. She was light in the microgravity, but maneuvering her through tight corridors would be awkward. Sarah picked up a medical kit and a tranquilizer gun, perhaps wishful thinking that it might slow the entity if needed. They hurried to the sealed bulkhead. Michael slammed the override to unseal it. Nothing happened. The med bay was quarantined. He swore under his breath and manually cranked the wheel for the emergency release. With a groan, the partition lifted enough for them to squeeze Elena's body through. The station hall beyond was eerily quiet, aside from klaxon alarms further away. Lights flickered low, power fluctuations increasing. They'd have to navigate an alternate route to avoid the compromised sector with the storage bay. As they made for the central hub that connected to the shuttle bay, a thunderous banging resonated through the ceiling. "It's above us." The thing was moving along the exterior, perhaps, tracking them by sound or some preternatural sense. Sarah clutched the tranquilizer pistol in one hand, guiding Michael with the other. They walked as fast as possible, the weight of Alvarez in Michael's arms straining his muscles even in reduced gravity. They passed the door to the command module, dark and empty, a few overhead monitors flickering with static. A thought flashed in Michael's mind. Could he try one last calm hail for help? No time. Plus, if the creature entered the command module from outside, that would be the worst place to corner themselves. A sharp, metallic screech scraped directly overhead, and a panel on the ceiling buckled inward, denting. The thing was trying to tear through. "Go, go, go!" Michael hissed. He and Sarah propelled themselves down the final passage to the docking bay where their shuttle, the Skylark, was berthed. The docking bay doors were open. Patel had prepped for them. Thank God. Inside, the small shuttle waited, lights on, rear hatch yawning. Through the bay's observation window, stars rotated slowly. The station was losing orientation control. Likely the damage threw off its stabilizers. Michael and Sarah dove into the shuttle's hatch. Patel was in the pilot seat, frantically running through pre-flight checks. He had bandaged his own forehead messily, red seeping through. "Strap in," he shouted. "We need to launch now. I don't know how long the station will hold pressure." Michael gently secured Alvarez into a padded acceleration couch and buckled her in. Sarah clambered into the co-pilot seat beside Raj. Michael slid into the remaining front seat, hands shaking as he began powering up auxiliary thrusters. "Detaching umbilicals," Raj reported, flipping switches. The shuttle shuddered as mechanical clamps released. A horrific shriek echoed from the bay entrance behind them, carried through the metal rather than the air. Michael dared a glance at the external camera feed. In the corner of the screen on the bay wall, he saw it. A spidery black silhouette crawling into the docking bay through an open maintenance vent. "Punch it, Raj!" Michael yelled. Patel needed no convincing. He slammed the launch control. The Skylark's engines roared to life, G-forces pressing them into their seats. The shuttle lurched forward just as the creature leapt from the wall towards them. Through the rear viewport, Michael glimpsed a flash of spindly limbs and a slavering maw an instant before they rocketed out of the bay into open space. For a few breathless seconds, the shuttle tumbled, the starfield wheeling nauseatingly. Then the stabilizers kicked in and their trajectory leveled. "We're out!" Sarah gasped, half in disbelief. Michael pressed his face to the side window, looking back at Outpost Thule. The station was receding, its ring structure visibly damaged in 2 places. He saw a portion of the habitat spinning slowly away, a chunk that looked like the storage module they'd been in, and clinging to the side of the station, near the docking bay they'd escaped, was a dark shape. Even from this distance, Michael could see its unnaturally long limbs and the glint of the red star on what might be eyes. The creature detached from the hull and propelled itself in their direction as if it could swim through space by force of will. "It's coming after us," Sarah cried, seeing it too. Patel cursed and fired the shuttle's rear thrusters at full burn. The Skylark surged ahead, inertia pressing them back. Michael kept watching out the viewport. The creature grew smaller as they accelerated away, but to his horror, it kept pace far longer than any unassisted being should. It sailed through vacuum with frightening velocity, drawn toward them. 1 minute to faster than light range, Raj reported, voice cracking. The shuttle's FTL drive needed a safe distance from the station's gravity to engage. Alvarez coughed behind them, semi-conscious, moaning softly in confusion. Michael silently urged her to hold on just a bit more. 20 seconds, Raj intoned. The creature closed the gap. It was mere dozens of meters behind now, an angular silhouette stark against the blue-green curve of Caliban. It reached out an appendage, stretching impossibly far. At that moment, Michael had a flashback to his dream, David's black eyes, and the feeling of falling into darkness. Number. He refused to let this nightmare continue. He slammed his fist on the emergency release of the shuttle's engine coolant, a risky move. Superheated plasma vented from ports at the rear in a sudden burst. The creature flew directly into the expanding cloud of plasma. A brilliant flash erupted as the coolant ignited. In the glare, Michael saw the entity flail, its form illuminated. Charcoal, black skin slick and charred, a maw opened in what must have been a silent scream. Its body convulsed, and it veered off, spiraling away from their trajectory. "FTL jump, now!" Sarah shouted. Raj engaged the drive. The stars ahead stretched into lines, and with a final thunder of thrust, the Skylark punched into superluminal speed. Outpost Thule, the creature, the horror, they all vanished behind them in an instant. Silence. The hum of the FTL drive was the only sound now, a gentle throb through the shuttle's hull. Michael released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands were white-knuckled on the console. Sarah leaned back in her chair, eyes closed, tears leaking out the corners. Raj let out a hysterical little laugh that turned into a sob, then regained control, wiping his face. "We made it," he whispered, as if afraid saying it too loud would undo it. Michael unstrapped and floated to Dr. Alvarez. She was alive, though in bad shape. Frostbite, hypoxia, internal injuries. They'd need serious medical attention soon. He adjusted her oxygen mask, murmuring, "Hang on, Elena. We're safe now." 14 hours after the escape, the shuttle Skylark was safe aboard the rescue frigate Artemis. Michael sat strapped to a cot, tea cooling in his hands. Medics worked around him. Alvarez was placed in cryo to halt her injuries. Sarah stayed close, and Patel retold their story to a doubtful intelligence officer. The captain pressed Michael for answers. What had attacked Outpost Thule? Michael stared at the rippling tea before answering. It came from the artifact. Whether trapped inside or born of us, I don't know. but it was intelligent, hostile, not this world. The captain called them heroes, but Michael felt only like someone dragged back from the grave. Sarah sat beside him, steadying his shoulder. He thought of Miller, Wolf, the others lost. "If we hadn't brought it aboard," he began, but Sarah cut him off. "Don't. We couldn't have known. We saved Alvarez. We saved ourselves. That has to mean something." A soft earth song played in the med bay. For the first time in days, Michael noticed warmth in the tea, Sarah's presence, Alvarez's steady pulse. Yet shadows flickered at the corner of his vision. For a heartbeat, he thought the creature had followed them. Just exhaustion, he told himself. Sarah noticed his clenched fist. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just tired," he lied. She whispered, "Do you think it's really over?" He didn't believe it, but squeezed her hand anyway. "Yeah, it's over." She let herself believe, leaning on him until sleep took her. Michael stayed awake longer. Each time he drifted, images surged back, faces, blood, green light. Each time he forced his eyes open, he saw only the bright med bay, Alvarez alive, Sarah safe. 3 survivors. That had to count. An ensign offered him water, told him they'd soon arrive at Trident Base. Michael drifted to the viewport. Ahead lay a green planet, a ringed outpost, stars that seemed welcoming rather than cruel. For the first time, space looked beautiful again. "Michael?" Sarah's voice pulled him back. She had woken, anxious until she saw him. He took her hand. "How are you holding up?" she asked. He managed to smile. "On the mend." She nodded. "Me too." Docking alarms chimed. Michael thought of writing everything down. Proof for those who would doubt. "No one will believe it," he whispered. "We'll make them," Sarah answered. "We have to." As Artemis slid into Trident's Bay, Michael pictured the fragment, the flare of green, the shape that followed. Outpost Thule was now a tomb, maybe still haunted, but here fresh air and bright light waited. Hand in hand, they stepped forward. The whispers of the void might follow them forever, but they had faced the abyss and returned. For now, that was victory enough.